Hi, good morning. My name is Peggy van de Plassche, and today we're going to talk about conspiracy theories and how to navigate conspiracy in this digital age. And really, how do we position ourselves between critical thinking and certainty? So, I went to a great event a few days ago. And well, by the time you'll see that video, it will be already a couple of weeks. But it was an event that was organized by the French consulate here in Toronto. Actually, they're turning through Canada. And it was super insightful and extremely well moderated, actually. And it was really on this idea of conspiracy theory and how in the digital age we can actually understand what is information, what is misinformation, but also how these complot theories, start and actually spread. So the two people who are moderating, who are actually speaking, were one, the moderator, her name was Gabrielle Sabourin. She's actually a journalist at Radio-Canada. And the gentleman who was interviewed, actually, it's probably more a fireside chat, was Rudy Reichstadt. So Rudy has started an organization called Conspiracy Watch. And he started that organization already 15 years ago almost, because it was after the terrorist attack of 9/11. And we also had three students coming at the end to share some of their experiences and some of their strategies as well. And it was super interesting to hear not just young people, but people who are really immersed in the digital culture tell us how themselves and their family, they sometimes get caught into this type of complot theory, but also, again, what they recommend us to do, not to do that. So as you might know, I work really at the intersection between, technology and investments and relationships with governments, with investors. And I came away really with two big impressions. First one is really this danger that is posed by disinformation. It is a real danger. It's accelerating on top of that. And second, it's really I would say the battle against this disinformation that is also itself at risk to become dogmatic in its own way. And I'll come back to that, this idea of fighting fire by fire. So let's go back to 9/11, because Rudy was explaining a bit how and when this conspiracy theory has started to gain momentum. So from his perspective, the attacks of 9/11 really marked a turning point, where really what you could see before as a fringe conspiracy narratives, that were used to be confined to the political extremes, extreme right, extreme left. But these conspiracy narratives, they started to influence broader populations. So while before you were seeing that, as I said, just at the fringe, it started really trickling down towards the middle. And maybe you remember, months after the attacks, alternative versions started to emerge. And now we're in 2025, the impact is still spreading. So it is interesting to see that, it is still alive and well so long after. So that's when he decided to launch Conspiracy Watch, because it was not only the concern based from the 9/11, but also as a teenager, he was already fascinated. I'm not sure if the word is really fascinated, but maybe enraged. With Holocaust denialism and this negationism idea, agenda, discourse that was refuting the Holocaust, despite the fact that you still had survivors, despite the fact that you still could actually visit some of these camps, and he couldn't understand how people would negate things that had real proof. And over time, I would say that that worry evolved and it extended to the pandemic skeptic, to the anti-vaccine movement, to climate change denial, to geopolitical conspiracy. So he has plenty of topics, I would say, to look for. And a very important insight was conspiracies no longer die. They persist in the past because we were taking our news through newspapers or even TV. Well, after 6 months, you don't have these newspapers in circulation anymore. You don't. So the ideas used to die, but now, due to the digital permanence, but also the algorithm amplification, you have these zombie ideas that don't die. So decades after, you still hear the aftermath, like with 9/11. And he also mentioned very interesting data. So 7 out of 10 YouTube videos watched are algorithm driven. And what I mean by that is that these are not videos that you selected because you needed to understand, I don't know, how to build your IKEA furniture. No, at some point, maybe you wanted to understand how to build the IKEA furniture, and now your algorithm is serving you a whole lot of things that is related more or less loosely. So 70% of the content that is consumed on YouTube, the viewers didn't really decide what to watch. It was served to them. So I think that's very interesting, and that explains why people can fall into a rabbit hole. Every day you have the equivalent of more than 100,000 years worth of YouTube video watched. 100,000 years every day of video watched on YouTube. So that's quite staggering. My videos, you can watch them ad nauseam. They're good for you. Might not be the case for each of the videos that are watched every day. Another interesting perspective is that half of the content that is shared on X, Twitter, so like when you share content, hasn't even been read or opened. So if there is, let's say, a video in it, the link has not been clicked. 50%. So 50% means that someone saw a link, someone saw a title, there is a link, they are not looking at the content, and they reshare it. And that is 50%. So you can imagine you could literally put any type of video, really doesn't matter. You would still have 50% who will share based on the title. And that is really scary because now suddenly you can make any video, make any different justification just based on the title. People don't even verify before sharing. I'm not even saying liking, sharing. And there was an interesting study that was made in 2016 that was showing that seniors were most likely to share fake news on Facebook. Well, it's a bit a difficult one because at the same time, the sample of seniors is pretty low. Was pretty low on Facebook. I think it's still pretty low in 2016, even if people are probably a bit less on Facebook now. But so it was something that was interesting. It's not necessarily a question of age, a question of education. And older people were actually quite susceptible to believe into fake news. So, and that's the thing we need to understand is that this platform, the social media platforms, they reward the sensational, not the factual. And I mean, if you're spending any time on your platform, whatever it can be LinkedIn, again, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, it doesn't matter. You will see that the content that receives the most support, I mean, like, share, engagement, whatever, is usually something that's going to be very like emotionally driven. It's rarely information. It's really something that is insightful. It's usually like my cat, whatever, my daughter, whatever, my boss told me that, like things that are engineered in a way to react, to make people react. That's something maybe you should keep in mind when you consume that topic. I know that myself, when the internet started, so not yesterday, I put a rule in place. I don't click on any link that is clickbait. Even if something I'm like, ooh, I'd like to see, I don't know, what this celebrity wore at the Oscar, or, oh, I could make that type of money doing that, or, oh, whatever, you know, like the big mentions in Wall Street Journal, anyway, anything like that. I make a concerted effort that I don't click. And I think these are the type of words we can put for ourselves. Anything that is clickbait, you are not clicking. Because first, wow, that rots your brain, but also after the algorithm keeps serving you that type of shit. So it's very important, I think, to have our own set of rules. That's my own rule. So let's talk about conspiracy theories and why they resonate. So there are three things that really make them resonate is this idea of simplicity, certainty, and community. And so Rudy broke down also the psychological ingredients of a conspiracy theory. First, there is always a scapegoat, someone you can blame, someone it's the fault to if whatever happens. Second, there is always uncertainty, because it means that we will never really know what happened. And that uncertainty, even it's very small, create a great opportunity for a conspiracy theory. And third, there is often a rejection of reality, which is replaced by emotional conviction. Like the earth is flat, like the flattest type of thing. You can prove to people the earth is not flat. You can bring them to the North Pole, show them, the sun that's not gonna set, proving the earth is round, whatever, and they would still say it doesn't prove anything. So there is really this strong rejection of reality. No matter what proof you bring to, it's not going to change their perspective. And that's also why these conspiracies really feel empowering, because they offer certainty in a world that is, full of doubt, obviously, but also very complex, very ambiguous in terms of morals. And these theories, they provide a sense of control, but also it provides a sense of belonging. Again, I'm going back to this, flattist, like the people who believe the earth is flat, is that they have their own conferences, they have their own groups, they have their own whatever. So when you don't have much in your life, well, now suddenly you have a purpose. Well, don't quote me on how great that purpose is, but you're not alone anymore. So this is really something that's important. And, like the way Rudy puts it is that the conspiracy mindset isn't always about fascination. It can also be rooted in fear, in anger, or a refusal to accept powerlessness. Again, that idea of not knowing, but also that idea of uncertainty. So one thing I want to mention, and Rudy was quite persuasive in his own arguments, but I could not help but notice a hint of intellectual rigidity in his own approach, particularly in how confidently he claimed to identify the real experts and how he firmly dismissed alternative interpretations. And that really made me think about this fine line between healthy skepticism and intellectual dogma. And that's always the challenge, is that now you have someone who dedicated his life to fighting conspiracy theory, and it becomes obviously his own dogma. So you have people who believe, I don't know, the earth is flat, 9/11 was an inside job, I don't know, the aliens are among us, doesn't matter, whatever theory. And you have someone who's like, no, like if it's not the way he framed it, if it is not agreed upon by the majority of scientists, well, it's easy to see that it's wrong. And, I was there and I was like, wow, that's not true, because obviously science evolves every day. So things we used to believe 50 years ago, or 100, 200, were proven wrong because as science evolved, and it's not that it was conspiracy, it's just that we didn't know enough. So it's perspective of, well, if everyone agrees on it, it's true. I don't really agree about that, but I understand that it creates that uncertainty. What I'm saying is actually technically not dogmatic enough, because I am not refuting any conspiracy theory. Well, the Earth is flat, maybe, but because at the end of the day, there are many things that are still unknown, and maybe in 200 years, people will laugh at some of the things that we believe now are absolutely true or untrue. Like anyone who raise children know that when you have a baby, so you had every 10 years, you need to put it on the side to sleep, you need to put it on the back, you need to put it on the belly, and then it rotates every 5-10 years. Well, just that means that obviously the scientific community doesn't agree on that. Is it a conspiracy theory to kill babies? That's something else. But you know what I mean, is that so I thought it was a bit interesting to see. I can see how it's difficult for him to keep a healthy skepticism versus a dogmatic approach. And it made me feel a bit uncomfortable, that his strong approach of, well, I know who the real experts are, and if everyone's believes something, that means it's true. Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, move on. He mentioned something I didn't know, which is maybe something you do, which is called the Brandolini's law. And it's really this idea of disinformation asymmetry. And I thought it was a very interesting framework that was shared. And it's this idea that the amount of energy needed to refute bullshit is an order of magnitude greater than to produce it. So what does it mean? It means it takes more work to refute disinformation than to create it. That's as simple as that. And I mean, it really shows, if you look at social media, it is exponentially easier and cheaper to create false narratives than to verify accurate ones, because a true verified piece of information that requires time, it requires resources, it requires expertise, while a conspiracy meme, like on the other end, it takes seconds, and I mean, I can even use one of the generative tool like ChatGPT to make a fake, literally fake picture, fake image, fake tagline, fake newsletter, and here we go. That's the good old days of April's Fool, So the asymmetry is really like this cornerstone of a disinformation crisis. And, you add to that the sheer scale of the content, YouTube, Telegram, X, whatever, but also the collapse now of editorial gatekeeping. We've seen Meta was just like saying, okay, well, good luck with that. And it's easy to see why to trust in media and institution and even truth is eroding, because people consume shit all day long. And, it's very insidious. It's like that movie Inception, like an ID. Who do you fight against an ID? And if you're watching content that has been served by an algorithm whose goal is to keep you engaged on the platform as long as possible, well, obviously they want to plant a lot of seed, and disinformation is a great way as well to create division, as we can see, unfortunately, today with what's happening in the US. So is there a solution? So Rudy emphasized education, obviously, critical thinking. I've been talking about critical thinking until I'm blue in the face, but also quality journalism. And he advocated for something that seems obvious, but that is not obvious. It's platform accountability. And that's a big challenge that in Europe, for example, there are laws that are requesting that platforms actually display information that have been validated and that there is no disinformation, but actually they don't respect the law. So there was something recently in Europe with Telegram, and the French authority, the European authorities actually, were asking the organization Telegram, which is a secured messaging app, if you don't know Telegram, they were requesting access to some accounts because they were investigating a sexual exploitation scheme for children, pedophilia, basically. And the organization didn't want to help, which I find is mind-blowing to me, but whatever. So what happened is that the second the founder and CEO set foot in France, he was detained. And suddenly, the information was shared. And guess what? A massive, massive network was uncovered with ramification in France, in Europe, everywhere. And I'm like, why on freaking earth don't you share that? And we had the same issue with Apple, actually, in the case of two young girls who had been kidnapped, and Apple wouldn't help the police to break into the kidnapper's phone. And I'm just like, what is fucking wrong with you? If it was your kid, your mom, your daughter, like one of your relatives or yourself, do you think it would make sense not to share information with the police? And that's the big challenge we're facing. And again, now I'm seeing the lobbying of platforms in the US. They're really pushing for even less accountability. And I can see in this totally insane protectionism mindset that they might get away with even less accountability. And we need to understand that there is a cost, like there is a lot of cost, revenge porn, all this thing, like young girls, young kids that are drugged, raped, the thing is put online. I mean, like these awful things. Platforms need to be accountable for that. And today I really don't see that. So the other things that you can do, because hoping for platform accountability, I think, unfortunately, is a long shot. We talk obviously about better education, but it's also signal misinformation. And that's always the same thing. When there is something on a platform you see that is inaccurate, people like you, like me, we're just going to move on. The only people who comment are actually the people who believe that shit. But one of the comments was, well, actually comment and show maybe a link to the true information, explain what it is not true. And I think that's one thing that's important. Well, that means you're spending time on platforms and you're seeing that thing. I don't really spend a lot of time on platforms, but if you do, that's one of the way to counter the disinformation. Yourself compare opposing channels. And what I mean by that is that, if you're liberal, maybe look at some things that are more like Republican, just to understand, okay, what's the difference? What is said? What's, is the truth in the middle? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that you're not being manipulated one way or the other. So having a full view of what is said on a specific topic is going to be very helpful for you. One thing that Rudy mentioned, I'm not sure if I really agree with him on this one, but anyway, he was mentioning understand how real conspiracies actually unfold. And from his perspective, very rarely like in theory. And he was referring to conspiracy theory, like when you have like a change in leadership in a country. So I don't know, maybe the militia, you have like a military coup or something like that, So from his perspective, they usually, this type of conspiracy, they don't last. It's really for one event in particular, whatever. Well, I don't know. I don't think he knows everything about how some conspiracies have unfolded, but from his perspective, they have different DNA. The real conspiracy and the fake conspiracy have a different way of expressing themselves. I don't know. And the other thing that I also agree with, it's slow down. And because speed is the enemy of accuracy, and like clickbait doesn't equal credibility. And one of the students, she was very rightfully mentioning that the written press also use that clickbait title in order to have people to look and read their articles or maybe buy their content. So it is not just like a random blog or some podcaster. So again, before jumping and clicking and assuming it's true, take a step back. Is it too good to be true? Does it make any sense? Like, who benefit from that shitty content? I mean, that's a good question. So I think making space for constructive doubt, because it is not about really refusing to question authority. I think it's very important to question authority, but it's also recognizing when this doubt becomes a substitute for evidence, So again, you want to have healthy doubt, but you don't want to also become paranoid and think you're lied to on everything all the time by everyone, or maybe we're in the matrix and then that's a different situation and we're all asleep. Maybe we're not. So again, my final reflection is that again, I really value Rudy's sense of urgency and his depth in his belief, in his work. I also walked away wondering, what happens when the fight against disinformation becomes itself inflexible, And I'm sure, again, him and other people in the space have, an ability to call out misinformation, but it cannot be with such high level of certainty. I don't think you can say, I can detect the real experts. I know who's right. I know what's right. That I think is a bit too extreme. Obviously, no one knows what's right all the time on every topic. I mean, just thinking that means you're wrong, So, and again, it's this thing is that what if as we become, in this effort of combating false narratives, what if we become less open to complexity and nuances? Because again, it is a scale, like, okay, between the extreme, complot theory with people who, again, the earth is flat and the 25 over theory they probably believe, and someone was like, you know what, I'm not sure I'm going to believe that everything I'm reading is true. And yeah, there are a lot of money that influences power that is in the shadow. It has always existed. It's not from today. Machiavelli, like all these things are dating. I was reading something on the Roman Empire. Obviously, that was the same thing. Everyone had someone talking in their ear. That is not new. Lobbying is not new. So there is obviously always more than what you see. There is more than meet the eye. So you also want to not be naive and think the person who's telling you something is 100% fruitful. What's their agenda? There is usually always an agenda. So, and that's again the paradox of our era is we need clarity without oversimplification. We want confidence without certainty, and it's very difficult as a human being. We don't like uncertainty. So when there is uncertainty, we want to close the loop. And a complot theory is the ideal way to have a solution. So again, we need to protect the truth while still questioning power. And I think that's a balance we really need to keep in mind. So thank you so much for watching, for listening. Again, super interesting topic. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know, any comments. You can learn more about me on my website, peggyvandeplassche.com. And looking forward to our next conversation. Have a great day. Take care.